there's a little bit of pain involved in that. So we're seeing a lot of people that are in seasons of transition. A lot of churches doing that right now.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much, and this is what we're going to jump into, attendees, in just a moment. To look back on what has happened, what we all have experienced personally within our congregation, within our community, and then how that can help us looking forward as strategy, but also for ourselves. And that's give you a good look at what we're going to be talking about for the next 30, 40 minutes. I just realized that I didn't hit the record button to get it started. So that started about a few minutes ago. So if you're going to share this later with someone, you just let them know you missed the introductions. You can check up on that later. Let me go ahead and start sharing my screen here so you can follow along with our PowerPoint today. And that's just a introductory slide there. And this next slide gives you an idea of where we're going for this hour. We're going to first hit on what we've learned from this last 15 months or so, what we've learned as individuals, also about our congregations. And the bulk of what we're going to sit in is this middle section of what decisions need to be on the table. And I think I can speak for our panelists today. We're not experts. We don't have all the answers, but we can at least make sure as best we can that you've heard some important things to be talking about, to be thinking about with your teams, and of course with your staff. And then we'll wrap up coming sort of back, talking about you as a leader and your staff as what's important for you moving forward. So Matt, I'm going to let you jump off first here as we talk about this first section about what we have learned. And first of all, just talk about what we have learned about ourselves as leaders. We got a couple of thoughts here on the screen, sort of how adaptive maybe we've learned we are or are not. Are we thrivers or survivors? There's plenty of things we could add to this list. What would you say you've observed that leaders are learning about themselves?
I think this has been just a fascinating season, right? Because my seminary did not prepare me for what we just experienced. And so I think what we're kind of learning church-wide is that if we're not adapting, we're not going to survive, right? I think that's something that I think we've instinctively known for years and years, but I think what we've had to do over the course of the last, 12 months, 15 months, however many months, we've seen probably in a lot of churches about 15 or 20 years worth of innovation in that stretch. And so the churches that have done well in this season have been the ones that have leaned into change, have been the ones that have leaned into being able to kind of shift on the fly and operate in that weird, in between space. And I mean, those are the churches that have lived well through this season and haven't been struggling. Now, some of the churches that have kind of leaned back and waited to say, hey, we're going to wait till this goes back to normal. Those are the churches that are struggling. One of the main themes that we're seeing as far as staffing goes, and as far as rebuilding teams on the other side of this, we're seeing churches lean into I'm a seminary grad, so I have to put an acronym on everything. We see them padding their staff, PAD. So we're seeing people going back to that old school pastoral skill set, people that, get pastoral ministry first and are able to walk with people through challenging times and times of grieving and mourning. We're seeing people, churches that are looking for people that are going to be agile when, next time the apocalypse visits us, that are able to kind of shift on the fly and lean into different things. And we're also looking for people to be developers, and are able to help volunteers give away ministry. They don't necessarily have to be the specialist anymore, but they have to be able to develop and unleash people. Those are the big three themes that we're seeing around adaptation church-wise right now.
Yeah, and I appreciate you using that language, that imagery of leaning in or leaning out. And that, I think that certainly can help us even gauge ourselves. How well am I doing at that myself and leading the church? John, I'm going to bring you in here and let you talk about this next slide about what have we seen? What have we learned about the congregation, the people as a whole? A couple of thoughts here on the screen. What would you add to these thoughts?
Sure, thanks. I just want to start by saying that change for people in churches is difficult normally. um, I walked our church through a bulletin change one time, and that didn't go over very well with numbers of people that had been used to the bulletin they had. But what they were experiencing was their New Yorker magazine was changing, their newspaper was changing, it got smaller. Everything around them was changing. And the last thing they wanted to change was the church bulletin. So now keep in mind, again, this is probably 6 or 7 years ago. And so then you fast forward to now when everything really is changing around them. They can't go to a restaurant anymore, go shopping very well, etc. No matter where people, are with their own personal feelings or comfort level, everything's changed. And so it's changed with the church too. And some of the times I think we may be using it as an opportunity, which is a good thing to make some changes, but we also have to be aware that people, they don't fear the loss of change, they don't fear change as much as they fear loss. And that's not my own mind, so please don't credit to me. I can't tell you who it's from, but they're not as afraid of change as they are afraid of loss, because the reality is they feel like they're losing something. And so we have to bring people into the process. If we're making changes, we have to help them be part of it in some way, shape, or form. For some people, that could be building something for the space. For others, it could be, praying over the space, walking with groups, figuratively or literally, that are they're going to be part of a new space or a new ministry experience. That's just a couple quick practical ideas on there. And then the other thing that I had with change and adaptability is the idea that if we're not thriving, if we're surviving, then we're just on the plateau. And most of us in the church world have heard before what happens when you get to the plateau. We typically don't realize that we're on a plateau, and eventually you descend downward, and it's very hard to create new ministry opportunities once you're down and you're just trying to literally survive and not fall off. Mm-hmm. So last little thing I wanted to show them is, let's see, I can share my screen or do you want to share yours?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me, oh wait, I can't share it. It's disabled for me. If you can throw up I got a quick little picture from ChickfilA.
Let me see I didn't save it. So let me see if I can find it for you. Go ahead and describe it for us.
So here's this, and you all can probably find it if you look on Twitter or look on the internet somewhere. But I got this. I think I actually got it in the mail, but I know I at least got it in the email. And it's making room for a new favorite, and it has a picture of the chicken tenders on it, or chicken strips, right? So if anybody else is eating chicken strips, my kids love eating at Chick-fil-A. I will frequently get an order of chicken strips. I don't need the sandwich anymore. Also, the grilled Cool Wrap, another thing I like to get from there, and the side salad. They're letting go of those. So it's starting April 26th, we're saying farewell to our original Chick-fil-A chicken strips, entree, grilled Cool, etc., to say hello to a new menu option in your area. The new spicy chicken strips menu item is seasoned with a blend of peppers and It goes through all the stuff. We want to continue providing you with the quality food and service you've come to expect. So we've had to make some hard choices about what we continue to serve on our menu. Let us know what you think. And they've got a little web address and stuff. Oh, great. Thank you for getting it up there. My point in sharing this is even Chick-fil-A changes things. They got rid of their coleslaw a few years ago to add macaroni and cheese to the menu. We all have to change, and it's going to be hard for people. So it's how we walk with them through it.
But I think what's the best part of that email is the very bottom. It says, let us know how you feel. And I think that's that buy-in that you were saying a second ago, John, is letting people be a part of that process. Because once they're able to get it out, like, I loved holding a bulletin in my hand. I don't know what change you made. But just having that opportunity for people to say, how do you feel about this? But as a leader, we need to be led not by the congregation, but we need to be led by the Lord. Especially if you're talking about churches, really in anything, we need to be led by the Lord. And I think sometimes what I've seen in churches is where the leader has a desire to change, but because they're afraid of the few, they're not willing to do it. And they heard from those few, but everybody else is saying, man, we trust you, leader, to lead us. And but I think getting that buy-in by Chick-fil-A, I mean, they know what they're doing. And I doubt they really listened to too many of those people that complained. It was just a way for them to vent so that they could get their feelings out.
Yeah, I'll save
time. They just want to be heard. They want to make sure that somebody is paying attention to them. Gordon MacDonald had a great book on this, like 7 or 8 years ago, called "Who Stole My Church," and kind of walking through change and that kind of stuff with people. Fantastic resource for this kind of thing.
Speaking of resources, attendees, we plan to send you a list of resources that I'll follow up with you in an email later after the webinar is over. So as you hear things, certainly you can write them down. And if you missed something, hey, put a note in the chat. What was that book? We'll try to get that to you as well following. And I want to go back to getting back to our slides here, and just to mention and not to discredit what we've learned. And I think we've learned a lot about what grieving is. John, you mentioned that at least about loss. It's not just loss of life. We've lost, you mentioned the bulletin, but we've lost so many different things, and just acknowledging what that means to people and how that does impact them is huge. And how we navigate that moving forward, what we've learned, it certainly helps us. I want to move us to the next slide here. And this is a quote from a pastor here in Sarasota. And it was so helpful when I read this. This was in the local newspaper around Easter weekend. And Pastor Ken Blythe, who's at St. Armand's Key Lutheran, he said, our whole congregation is trying to look forward. Basically, every time we talk, we get together, we talk about what's happened. At some point, we have to stop doing that. He said, and even I have to, and start focusing on what's ahead. Recognize, not to discredit and not to miss the trauma that people have walked through, but at some point, we do have to start looking forward. And just want to use that to help us all think, all right, it's time to determine what needs to be on the table, what decisions need to be on the table, what do we need to be talking about, even if it's not fun, even if we don't have the answers. So let's jump into this. And Michael, I'm going to ask you to speak first. Let me share this stat here and then ask you to comment about this. This is from the Barna Research Group, and they recently did a survey. And this is the results of the survey regarding what people's choices are about going to gathering. So 50% said that 52% said they prefer to be back in person, 9% digital gathering only, 35% say both. So, Michael, I know this is a lane you live in every day.
Yeah.
When you look at that, what does that tell you?
I agree. I think, and I'm not surprised by that at all. I think what that tells me is that people are going to, like we just talked about a second ago, people are looking for someone to follow. And I believe as a leader in a church that is leaning into, as Matt was saying earlier, as a leader in a church that's leaning into where our culture is going, which is dangerous to say whenever you're leading a church. But the truth is, you've got to look that direction. Best Buy has all. I mean, there's all these stats about what happened to Best Buy whenever the virus hit and all the things. They started laying off people. But the truth is, what happened with Best Buy is as they opened their stores, their online continued to go up like crazy. It was like 20-something% how Best Buy just continued to shoot up when they opened their doors. So people were still coming. And at the same time, people were taking their content from online. So in saying all this, I think what's important is that our front door just looks a lot different. Mm-hmm. Our front door has got to be both physical. We've got to make it how we have. We've got to have the greeters, have the people in the parking lot. We've got to do all of those things for the front door. Man, this description just showed up on it. Out right here. No, I like it. I like it a lot. I just don't know what to do with it. I can't see myself. Okay, I'm back.
Finish your thought.
I feel comfortable now. I lost my face. But our front door just looks, it just looks different. So we have a beautiful front door. We got the glass at our physical church. But the truth is, people are going to walk through your physical front door if your digital front door is wide open. And so we need to ask ourselves, what does our digital door look like? When people are going to your website, I would encourage us, let's look at our website like a lost person would look at your website. They're going to come there, they're going to see, and they're going to explore, they're going to do all the things. And man, and I'm not saying we have to spend hundreds, a lot of the first excuses, oh, we don't have the budget for that. No, that's just an excuse because you haven't tried and you don't know what you're doing. It's not super expensive. Or you may say, man, we don't have a staff member for that. Well, here's how many staff member are on my team with extended family, 2, and I have 29 volunteers. And I just had somebody make a form for me that's in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, and it's awesome. And so it's really just kind of thinking, how can we reach those who aren't here yet? Because people are looking at our churches online. And once they stop by your church online and they don't like what they see, I promise you, they're probably not coming back. And so we have to be okay. Well, I'll stop, John. I don't know how much time I have.
Well, thanks for stopping, because I didn't warn everybody. There are a few polls that I put together that I'll just launch out there for. So Michael, I didn't mean to, freak you out and make
No,
you
that's
lose
okay.
yourself. Right. So this particular poll just had 2 questions. Give us the size of your congregation, and are you currently digital and in person? And automatically you can see 100% are doing both, which isn't surprising. The question, Michael, what you're helping us understand is what's the plan moving forward with that? Because there's so many questions to talk about that.
Yeah.
If this is new lane for you, I want to move us into the particular strategies about that. But first, a wonderful church leader, Mark Zuckerberg, that's a joke, has a quote here about taking risks. Because Michael, what you just said about budget and staffing, for some churches, that is risky. I mean, that's just going to feel like how do we do this? And we're going to have to step out in faith. But he's just saying basically in this quote here, if you don't try to take risk, you're not going to go anywhere. And it's should be part of our culture, and to know how to follow God and what he's leading us to do. So let's take the next 10 minutes or so and give some thought about strategy. We just saw this research about hybrid church model, in-person, digital. So let's look at this. And this, again, is not an exhaustive list, but you just touched on this a little bit, Michael, about volunteerism. Like, you got 29 people to help 2 people lead a full ministry. Matt, when you look at this list of strategy for both of these things, what stands out to you, and what do you think churches are looking at?
I love what Michael was talking about the volunteer piece. I think one of the cool things that could potentially happen on the other side of all this is we start to lean into what Tony Morgan's been talking about for years and years and years, about staffing 1 to 100 and being, again, more developmental and more releasing a ministry. I think that's way healthier for churches. To go back to your initial question though, John, I think one of the things that early on in this, some of the work that we did was just kind of helping churches give language to how they were approaching it. Right. We saw 5 different potential lanes, and I can share a couple downloads that we did with everybody after we wrap up, just talking about the 5 lanes that people needed to lean into. And it's not, there isn't a right one or a wrong one. People will probably disagree with me on that, but oh well. It's just one of those things where it's pick a lane and go. And so we look at it as being, are you a church that's waiting for the old normal to come back? And if you are, that's fine. Just admit it and run with it. Or are you a church that, your online presence is simply for people who are out of town that weekend, right? And again, own it. If that's who you are, be honest, be self-aware enough to own it. Or is this, is the purpose of your online, platform to be that front door, to get people to move to an in-person gathering? That's our third lane. Or we have one that's, our purpose of it is to get people together in living rooms, to be together, and to have like maybe a microsite type of a model. And then the last piece of it was more of a digital disciple mindset, where the idea is somebody may never step foot in our church, and we're okay with that. We're just going to resource them to grow in Jesus. And so for us, it wasn't so much a matter of, one of these is better than the others. It's just pick one of these, build your community around it, recruit your volunteer teams, and kind of leverage your strategy through that, and kind of run with it. And again, I'll share some of that stuff, John, with everybody once you send out the email. But
yeah, that's really helpful because, and again, I just want to remind everybody on this slide, we're talking about both. So everything Matt was just talking about, it's in both lanes, the in-person lane, the physical lane, and the digital lane. And that's a lot to be thinking about. Matt, you said earlier, 15 years of strategy happening to us in 12 months, like wham, here it comes. So I want to move us to just thinking about in person for a moment. And John, when you look, and again, this list could be much longer, but when you think about, for instance, John, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, last time we talked, Hyde Park wasn't fully all back in person yet. So as a church who's not all back in, so to speak, with that, when you look at this list of strategy about in person, what do you feel like churches need to be thinking about?
Yeah, so we had not resumed in-person worship until the Sunday after Easter, April 11th. We knew we needed to come back. And as all of you on here know, it takes a lot to make a Sunday happen. And so we wanted to do it well when we got to do it again. We had been meeting outdoors under a tent from last November up through Easter. And so we've come back. We had 5 services on any Sunday a year, 14 months ago, right? Pre-COVID, we had 5 services, 4 on one campus in the morning and 1 in the evening on another campus. And we have 1 now, right? 1 at 9:30. It's when the most people were coming. It's when the most people with kids were coming. And that's when it is. It's not and so one thing I didn't mention about Hyde Park before is we are a traditional and contemporary church. We have a very high church worship service with robes and a pipe organ, stained glass, and a sanctuary. We also have a contemporary service, soon to be in a new space, but currently the music is still in the sanctuary as well, with guitars, drums, keyboard, everything you'd expect at any contemporary church. And so we're both and. But currently, again, this the strategy of starting well is the music is combined. It's kind of a blended service to some extent, except it's blended in that each week there's a different music group leading. And so one week it may be the traditional choir leading with bells and things, and the next week it may be the contemporary band leading. And so that's what we're doing now. And the point of that is choose what you can do well and do it. Like Matt was saying, pick your lane and just be that. I've coached churches before that were only traditional that thought that they needed to do contemporary to reach new people, for instance. And I would say, you know what, if you're traditional, just be the best darn traditional church you can be. But so I would say that it also helps with safety, right? Is to be able to start a little bit smaller. Is if you launch back with everything because you feel like you have to, something's going to break. It's or you're not going to be sure if you have the safety protocols in place that you want to do, that you need to do, depending on where people are that are listening to this, and different regulations in different places. So for that's what it was for us. In July, we're moving to 2 services at 9:30 and 11. But the other thing is that our online service is not going away. It used to be a live stream experience of the physical place, and during the pandemic, it shifted in the first few weeks from that to really starting to dream about and think about. And I wasn't on the team, so I can't take any credit for that. But they would think, where's a place that we can take our pastor and have him preach that's gonna be intriguing to people, be interesting. And so down where we're at in Tampa, he would sometimes be preaching from Bayshore Boulevard with the water behind him, or up on a rooftop in downtown, something interesting instead of just standing in front of a blank wall. And little things like that we can all do nowadays with our cameras on our phones is possible to keep it going. But I think the other part of that too is to realize that when we come back, when we're coming back now, it's not just creating something to create it, and it's not just doing virtual for the sake of virtual or not. It's assuming that we have a new normal, and as Michael said, people are going to be finding us online first, and we have to be ready to meet them there and in person. So
Yeah,
does that help?
I think so. I want to move us to this next slide away from in person, but before I do, just help us, and Michael, I'll come to you. When you see that bullet point, decentralized gatherings, let's define what that means for everybody, not to assume that we all understand that. In your mind, what's that referring to, Michael?
I'm guessing for us, that would mean people meeting offsite, but still really following what our pastor's name is, Jordan Easley, his teachings on Sunday. I mean, we even use this. I have the opportunity to lead a church in Egypt, and they are actually using his messages on Sundays. They are translating them, and they're having groups meeting in homes. And so very, very similar. You know, we have groups of people that they don't want to come back yet for whatever reason. And so they're able to use that. And we've created discipleship material for them to talk with each other in their homes or in nursing homes. So we've got a lot of assisted living around here, and we've got groups of people in assisted living homes that are meeting and discussing, whatever's happening here on Sunday.
Yeah, so that's an example of, that happens in person. So let's move now to thinking about the whole digital lane, because that's probably the one that people are still trying to get their head around about what the future looks like. So on this slide, we've got some things. Michael, as you look at this, this is, your bread and butter, so to speak. I don't know if you would agree with that, but this is your lane at your church, right? Yes, exactly. So for example, that first bullet point, when it says needing to have a strategy about presence, which I think John both of you already touched on this. It's not just be online, but have a strategy about being online that's beyond just listing when your service is and logistics. How do we go about being strategic with that?
Yeah, I think if whenever we are putting content out there, and you can go, I think you've got social media, then you have social marketing, and we've got to stop marketing on social, whatever that looks like. Because everybody knows Sunday is coming, and we continue to tell people on Saturday and Friday, hey, Sunday's coming. They've been going to church for a long time without us reminding them. It's kind of like it's kind of like time change. Like, hey, we got to remind everybody it's time change Sunday. Well, they already know it's time change Sunday. And so when we're constantly putting content out there that's marketing, our people aren't dumb. I mean, just like us, when I get an ad, well, that's not true. Sometimes I'll click on it because they're really, really good on social. But when we are telling a story of life change that's happening either online or in the building, people are drawn to stories of life change. And it doesn't have to be, hey, so come on Sunday to hear the rest of it. No, it's simply a story of life change, or just whatever that is. And so, as far as more than PR and logistics, I think if we want people to engage with our content, both physical and digital, then we've got to switch up our thinking a little bit versus, hey, come and see. But we've got to be able to go to them, and we've got to reach our people where they are. And I'm telling you, the more that we can tell a story, and the more that we can say, hey, here's some really cool things that are going on in the community, I think that people are drawn to that. The next bullet point, the content on demand, one-to-one, and optimize engagement, answer what they're asking. So I think it's super important that we have an on-demand all over the place. I think that's great. I think that people are going to go to it. I think that people are going to fast forward and listen to it. They're going to put it on 2 times, and they're going to listen to a sermon a little bit faster, just like I do on Audible. And we have to be okay with that, because right now I can go anywhere in the world and watch a sermon. I can. And then you hear people getting kind of upset. Well, they need to get out of their pajamas and come to church. Well, maybe they don't want to come to your church. And there's a reason for that. I don't know what that is. I mean, there's people who don't want to come to our church, and that's great. But if we get focused on the people in pajamas who aren't coming to church, really what we're saying are these people used to come here and they're no longer coming. Our focus has to be who's never come here. Those are the people we need to go after. And that's again, that's a change in thinking. And that goes back to Zuckerberg, our great spiritual leader. And it goes back to, and that's hard. I'm not saying that's easy. That's hard work. And that goes down to the last slide of knowing who we are. But I think something else is engagement. When you go to somebody's Facebook page, you go to Instagram, or you go to whatever it is, how's the engagement? When somebody walks in your church and they're not said hello to or high-fived or, man, how you doing? That's engagement in a physical church. The same thing should be happening online. When people are watching our services, we have a lot of information. When someone says they're watching from India or they're watching from Tampa, we have information. We should engage with them immediately. And I would love to talk strategy on that. There's some things that we've been doing that's really working. One of those is WhatsApp. If you're watching this right now and you want to reach the world, you can do it. I mean, you could do it, but WhatsApp is a great, I mean, I talk to people from India all the time right here. It's unbelievable, the stories that are happening there. So, let's see. Yep. I think that's good for now, John. If I missed anything, let me know.
No, I think you gave us good thoughts. The explanation of answer what they're asking, I think, which by the way, viewers, I'll share links to articles where some of this content was talked about from Barna. And what they were referring to right there is sermon prep. What kind of discipleship content are you putting together? Does it really meet them where they are? Is it answering questions that they are asking? And if you don't know what questions they're asking, ask them. What is it about? And fill in the blank that you would like to hear us. So many opportunities in this digital lane, as Michael was saying, to engage people who aren't churched people, who may not go. So before I leave this, because this is the end of this section, I just want to ask and give space, John, Matt, any of you three, to make any further comments about what decisions need to be on the table. You have any further comments to add here?
I was just going to jump in real quick on the content and the finding the right question for the sermons and things. For any pastors that maybe or church staff that may be listening to this and thinking, I hear that, but that to me that sounds like I'm a self-help person, right? Is I'm just trying to answer their questions. There's books for that, right? Maybe you're at a liturgical church and you follow the lectionary or something else for whatever reason. And not to say that I've ever encouraged my own preachers on that, but maybe I have, with the idea that we don't have to be the same as the self-help people of the world, but the reality is people are searching for answers to questions that we can help them find from a biblical perspective and from a place of faith. And the reality is they're not getting that from family most of the time anymore, friends most of the time, mentors, etc. And so we have to find a way to answer it still from, where the preacher is feeling led from the text, from the scripture, but also realizing that they're not getting their questions answered from other parts of life, like maybe people used to. So anyways, I just want to offer that.
That's great. I just want to remind attendees to use the Q&A box. I don't see any questions there yet. So if you have particular questions you want to pose so we can answer those before the end of the webinar, please utilize that. I want to take us now to our final bullet point in our thoughts today, and that is coming back to you as a leader. What's important for you going forward? And first thought, we're going to have two thoughts here. The first thought is about you just as an individual, as a child of God, as a human being. What's important for you going forward? We have a couple of thoughts here on the screen that you see. I just like the wording that what's important for me as a child of God, and some thoughts there about emotional awareness and mindset. We could have another whole hour just about this, but Michael, how would you encourage the leaders of what's important for them as they are looking and going forward?
I would say, and this is coming from somebody who has walked through a journey of mental health the past 3 years of really learning who I am ultimately as a child of God, but I think it's important to really, and I said this earlier, to really know who you truly are. And I say that like, well, we keep saying that, but do you? And if that's confusing to you, or pride rises up right now in us, and we're like, oh, I know who I am. Well, maybe you should take some time and really figure out who God says that you are. Because man, I've shifted. I thought I was a lot a lot of things, and man, it's fun to rest in my sweet spot where the Lord has me. And with that, Colossians 3:2, set your minds on things above. And when we're able to do that, when we are truly, and not just as a pastor and you say it from the stage, or in a counseling session, but when you're really able to set our mind on things above, man, you're gonna realize who you are. And a lot of times it's not very fun. And I think once we figure out who we are, and we're able to deal with the parts that rises up in us, that God's like, hey, let's work on this part. And you're like, no, not today, tomorrow. No, today. And man, just the freedom. And I'm living in that freedom right now of God revealing some things in my life that I had to work on. And now I'm able to walk in a different side of my life now, and just so much more peace.
Yeah. This is again.
I would say this. I'm sorry, John.
Go ahead.
I need to say this. Counseling is, and I know that's your world right now, John, but I see a therapist every single week. And I don't say this, hey, look at me. I say that because, man, I need to, and it helps me. And I'm not saying you should see a therapist every single week, but I am saying there's nothing wrong with that, because like we said earlier, man, you got to get it out. And once we get it out, the enemy's like, no, but man, once we get it out, there's so much freedom in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I jumped in really hard to begin the webinar because we were really tight for time, and I didn't even take time to introduce myself in Samaritan.
Yeah. Who are you?
Yeah, by the way. So, Michael, you're hitting on an important issue, and this is why Samaritan, where I work as the community care director, this is our first effort to start creating webinar content for church leaders. And this one is pretty broad, of course, about ministry, but we're going to be thinking and strategizing about how we can continue to bring content to you that helps you as an individual as well as a leader, because they're both important. It's a good balance. I'm going to reference real quickly here an article that I read recently about mental health for pastors. And I won't list all the 8 bullet points that he gave, but the final thought that he gave was about being hopeful, having a mindset of hope. And he said, speak hope, walk in hope, think hope, preach hope, immerse yourselves in hope. I'm not, if that doesn't help your mindset, I'm not sure what would. So paying attention to what God is talking to you about as an individual. And then, John, I'd like for you to switch the gear here for us and help us all think about going forward, what is important to me as a church leader. We've got 2 thoughts here about pace, and you've already mentioned that second thought there. What would you add to this, John?
Sure. So I've always been passionate about the idea of sustainability. We've all heard of work-life balance, but the reality is it's very hard for people, and it starts with the leader modeling it. We've probably all worked for different types of people, and we've probably all been different types of people ourselves at different points. Like Michael said, you have to know who you are. And so I think that's perfect for creating pace. Is start now, put boundaries around your time, and then help your team do the same thing, because we can all do most anything for a week, a few weeks, or even a month, but beyond that, something breaks us, our team, volunteers, or physical, things. If we don't create room and margins to take care of stuff. And then the part about honoring the past, the little thing that I had written down to think about with this part was to keep in mind as we're relaunching things of what does need to stay, because we can't change everything all at once. And again, at least for us here, this was a time where we were able to kind of let things sit for a bit before we reopened with everything, and that does give you a chance to look around and think, these pictures have been on the wall for a while. And that's, figurative and literally is maybe it's time for some new photos on the wall or new paint on the wall that you didn't have time to step back and look at before. So, but again, my caution is as we change things, just to be aware of how much we're changing and how fast, because it doesn't mean that it can't change, but maybe it's changing that next month and then in a year and then in 2 years. And that's okay, because you know what, we'll get the next year pretty quickly. So
definitely. Before I go to Q&A, I just want to give any of the three of you a space here to add anything about what leaders need to be focusing on as they move forward. Matt, you got anything?
I like that one of the things that that Michael was talking about was the emotional awareness piece. I think I think there's a piece of us that all of us as ministry leaders, we need to exhale and really take stock of where we've been. We as pastors typically do a pretty horrible job of self-care and watching out for each other. And I know you talked a little bit about hope, John, so I'm going to go and mess all that up. But one of the things that I'm praying about and our team's praying about right now is we are half expecting a wave of moral failures like we haven't seen before in the next 18 to 36 months, because we've just been through a season of isolation, of frustration and exhaustion. And if we are not speaking this to ourselves and saying, hey, we need to be aware of where we are. Where is our tank? Are we getting the counseling we need? But also with our staff teams, there's going to be hurt. And I hate to bring it down a notch, but I think we need to be aware of this and be caring and tending to the garden of our souls in ways that we probably haven't done in the past. There's so many opportunities for resets now coming out of this. I mean, there's so many great excuses to kill ministries that we probably shouldn't have been doing for a while. And as part of doing that, to be able to put some boundaries and put some guardrails in our own pastoral lives during that. And so I'd encourage people to really take some time and explore that.
You don't need to apologize for that, Matt. That's just real. And I would say that in the counseling world, it's the same expectation. You read anything, just Google it, and everyone is saying the tidal wave is coming regarding the need for mental health and counseling. Wow. So why wouldn't that be a same issue in the church and church leaders, right?
Yeah.
Going to be the same. Well, let's take a pause here. I see one question in the Q&A, so I'm going to ask it verbally, and it's Michael, you're mentioned, so we'll let you field it and see if anybody else has anything to add. It says, what fraction of your ministry should be devoted to restoring previous attenders to the church activities versus focusing on those who have never attended our church?
So I'm not going to give a fraction because I'm not good at numbers, but I do think, we've got to take care of who God has sent us and whatever that looks like. For us right now, we have 3 services. Our first service is an older crowd with a choir, but still somewhat contemporary. Our middle service is a little more blend. Our last service is like, let's go. I mean, it's obviously the one I go to, and it's incredible. But I think when we get lost in the fact that who's not here because they used to always come here, I think that we're saying the wrong thing. And because I know of some churches out there who are spinning their wheels just trying to get everybody back. I would encourage us, man, let's get excited for those who have not been here or those that just stepped in for the first time. And that's both online and physical church. I would say, I mean, Jesus is a really good example of going out and talking to new people and seeing them come to him and life change happening all the time. And so I would take and it may be hard for somebody who is just somebody in the congregation, but for a leader to say, you know what, we're gonna make a shift from the in-reach model, from hey, that's all about us, to going out and reaching those who are not here yet. And I believe that COVID is something that God, we can have the negatives with it, but man, let's look at it as a positive. We do get to kill things. We do get to change the pictures. Let's not waste, let's not waste a pandemic, and let's get after it. And let's find and there's good news, by the way. I mean, there are hundreds of people coming to Christ. I mean, thousands all around the world on a weekly basis. I mean, there is revival happening in a little city here in Tennessee, just up the road. I mean, people are coming to Christ everywhere. And I believe because people are hungry for something and they're seeing it and they're going. And so be encouraged, church. God is doing awesome things with this.
Anything to add to that, Matt or John?
I'm curious what Matt thinks about it, because he's kind of seeing this, and no, I'm serious, because I really am curious of his thoughts with that.
Okay.
I was kind of ready for you to do the altar call, actually.
I mean, we can.
I was coming.
Text saved.
I'm with you. We have the opportunity to go and do some of this, though. One thing I have been wrestling with, okay, is and I promise I'm going where you want me. It's just going to take a roundabout way to get there. One of the things that John talked about is how they're differentiating their online presence from their in-person presence. And I think there's some wisdom there. One of the things that we've been talking on our team just internally, because we've got a lot of pastors that are wrestling through this, and is the idea of how do we create a non-downloadable experience in our Sunday morning encounter. Because a lot of times what we've done is we've created almost like an NFL experience, where if I wanted to go to a football game, I'd have to get all dressed up, drive, deal with traffic, deal with parking lots, and the drunk ride sitting next to me, and the in-seat in my lazy boy experience on Sunday morning is way better for that, because the view's better and all that kind of stuff. I think we run the risk right now in creating that NFL experience on Sunday morning. And I think there's a piece that we need to figure out as the capital C church. How do we create an experience that isn't downloadable, so that when people look at your front door and are drawn in because of the power of that online experience, and then they show up on Sunday morning and they start to worship with the body and really connect with people, then they they realize, oh, maybe this is better than hanging out in my pajamas eating a waffle on Sunday morning while we're watching church. So I think that's the piece, Michael. I think a lot of people are wrestling with is how do we differentiate, and how do we create that non-downloadable experience? And that's
community.
It's tough because
it's
exactly
the key word is community. And I think whenever we're able to let our people know, hey, man, we've got, I mean, small groups and home groups and cell groups and the groups is the key. I really believe that with everything I have, because I agree with you. I love when you say that about an NFL experience. That's so good. But I believe community is the key.
Let me pipe in here.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Let me pop in here with a follow-up question. Michael, you mentioned in-reach and outreach as you were answering that previous question. And so the question's being asked, how do you define those two terms? What's different? What remains unchanged? Can any of the three of you speak to that, in-reach and outreach?
I'll jump in real quick. And Michael may have something even more here to share, but I think for me, it's the idea that if our people aren't all here, then it's harder to have an idea of in, because they're not all in the building, right? And so one of the things that we're wrestling with on our discipleship teams is, what does engagement even look like with small groups, with children, with youth? Because if they're not all coming to the one main program that you used to do for youth or for children, how are we trying to engage those groups of people out in the community? And so my point of that is really just to help I don't have the perfect answer. I'd be surprised if any of us had the perfect one, or anybody out there does. But the reality is the world of engagement is changing, and the church has to no longer only count engagement in the one big physical space. And so once that changes, is there really in reach or outreach, or does it go back to the first question that Michael answered well of really reaching new people, because there's so many new people out there? So I'll leave that.
Lots to think about. I feel like I need some ice cream or coffee or something. That was in
a waffle. Matt said waffle, and I got hungry.
All right.
Right. We have, for sake of time, let me just run this question out there. We got another Q&A question popped up here, and then this will be our final question here. It says, as all appear to be saying, online worship is here to stay. How do we incorporate this in the scripture that teaches us not to forsake the assembling together in an online world? I'll repeat that. How do we incorporate this in scripture that teaches us not to forsake the assembling together in an online world?
I would say this: if your online world is done well with community involved in that, then I would say they are gathering together. I think that it's important to, and that's where some training would take place for maybe some churches and other churches, for some training of how to create that engagement of people that are watching online. I think it's because it can be really fun, because they are gathering together. It just looks a little different. And so, yeah, we shouldn't forsake. I truly believe so. So the goal of extended family is not that everybody joins First Baptist Cleveland. You know, we've got people from all over the world, and I see victory whenever we have somebody who connects with us that is now in a local church. Like I had just had a guy in Tampa. I don't remember what church it was, but his front door was First Baptist Cleveland online, and now he's attending a church in Tampa. I mean, it's just like, what? And I think it's just as Jay was asking, I think that they are together. I just think it looks a little different.
Yeah. Well, we're going to cut this off. Viewers, by the way, that's just reminded me that one of the links that I'll have in the resource list that I send you is a Barna group product about hybrid church. I can't say that I've looked at it myself and gone through it, but it's a resource that I would at least look into if I were in your shoes. So for some final comments before we sign off today, John, I'll start with you. You have any, not that you have to have anything, but do you have any final comments for us?
Just keep learning, keep pushing yourself to learn and grow. I love listening to podcasts. I have a little bit of a drive. Andy Stanley's leadership podcast, the Unstuck Church Group with Tony Morgan. And then also, every now and then listen to some people that think a little bit different theologically from you, because that can help you when you're talking to other people, and just we all need to keep growing. So
thanks. And thanks for being here today, John. Michael, you got any final comments?
This isn't self-promotion, but it is important. I do have a podcast, and it is titled DFTW, and it is a blend of spiritual and mental health. And I really am very passionate about that, especially for pastors. So my final thoughts, man, I agree with John. Man, go for it. I would stay on our knees, pray about everything you do, every situation you go into, and watch how God can take you to the next level.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks for all the work you're doing to marry the two of mental health and the church world. Matt, any final comments?
I'm just going to circle back to what I said earlier. This has been a tough season. Name it.
Yeah.
Own it.
It's good.
Take care of yourself, y'all. You don't have an easy job, and it's okay to say that. Take care of yourself.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for helping us with this today, giving us a lot to think about. And for those of you who attended today, again, thank you. We will be praying for you because your work is important and you are important. So we're going to be praying for you. And if whether we can help you at Samaritan or any of these guys, I'll include their contact info in the resource stuff as well. And so again, thank you for tuning in today. As we create more webinars, we'll get you that information out to you as well so that you know and can take advantage of these things. Thanks for tuning in. Again, thanks, guys. Y'all have a good afternoon.